G'day everybody and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Explores Australia. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're still investigating our crime scene of Australia's invasive species, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time briefing as we're going to just get right back into the investigation. But as always, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button, check out my Facebook page for content on conservation, and if you have a question about animals or if there's an animal you want me to do in the future, you just have to send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in my description below. Now, if you recall from last week, we uncovered the fox, the camel, and the horse. But now we gotta get rid of those guys and get ready to meet one of the other worst invasive species, water buffalo. Now I know you're probably thinking it seems unexpected, right? What were they needed for? Certainly they can't get through the deserts. And no, originally they were brought by the European explorers when they were settling the Northern Territory of Australia as an available food source. However, as does happen in the course of history, some of these animals were either escaped or they were released when they were no longer really needed by the people for their original purpose. In this case, them being used as food. So you're probably thinking, but they can't seem to be doing too much damage. Unfortunately, they are. And here's what the problem with these guys are doing. Unintentionally, the wallows that they create and all the moving that they do actually is altering some of the wetland habitats that special animals need. Like, if you remember my saltwater crocodile episode, the habitats seem to be disappearing a little bit or are altering to an area that's not really suitable for them because of water buffalo. But it gets worse for others. The humans are affected too. More specifically, human farmers or ranchers that raise livestock, more specifically cattle. As a result, because cattle and buffalo are part of the bovine family, they often may share diseases that can affect them nasty like. So it's not exactly a good situation for them. And as a result, they're also out competing, like I mentioned, with the horses and with the camels. They're also competing the native wildlife for food availability. Finally, this is probably one of the worst known, not just here in Australia, but also in Florida, as well as different parts of where they've been introduced. The cane toad. Ugh. That's right. The cane toad. The one where if you encounter it, get away from it. Don't let your pets eat it because they emit a special toxin. It can cause the pet to die and have a bad foaming reaction in their mouths. You're probably wondering why would even they want to bring these animals in? So here's kind of how the story goes. This is a sugarcane beetle. Now, these toads because these creatures were originally native to Central America and South America, they were seen in special parts like in Puerto Rico where the sugar canes were grown vigorously to supply and meet demands of the growing populations in not just in Europe but also America. So the cane toad was seen eating the cane beetles, and as a result, when explorers and settlers started coming to Australia and started growing sugar cane as well, they automatically assumed that the sugar cane beetles would be controlled by the cane toads when they were first released. They were wrong. In fact, they've actually, from starting up here, they've pretty much spread far and wide. And it gets even worse. There's unfortunately no evidence that from different captured cane toads and dissected toads, their stomach contents have been examined, and there's really not much in terms of the sugarcane beetle inside. So they're not even eating the animals that they were intended to eat. They're eating all the other native insects of Australia. And because of their competitive nature, they're driving out more amphibians and reptiles out of their habitats and even some into extinction. So far, the largest cane toad that's been found on record was found by just short of 2 years ago and has in Conway National Park up in northern Queensland, which was recorded to be 25 centimeters and has been dubbed as Toadzilla, potentially the largest ever known to ever exist. And so, unfortunately, the long-term effects of toads on the Australian environments are fairly difficult to determine, but some effects include the depletion of native species that die eating cane toads, the poisoning of pets and humans, depletion of native fauna preyed upon by cane toads, and reduced prey populations for native insectivores such as skinks. Well, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this. We've come to the end of this special. We can't go over every single invasive species in Australia, but by now the point should be fairly made. So now the important thing to know. Now the question is, well, we made a mess. We brought them here. Now what? Well, as I've said already in all my previous Safari Mack episodes, it's not too late. It may be hard to manage them, but we are looking at ways to help reduce as many of these animals as possible without harming the environment or ourselves. However, there are some points where there's a little bit of an argument going on. Remember the fox, Vulpes vulpes? Well, biologists in Australia, they all agree that foxes are fairly bad for Australia's environment, but now, because they're well established, if we remove them suddenly, it could potentially cause some environmental problems that, since they were already introduced and established, it could cause a little bit of a collapse. So that one's a little bit of a challenge, but we still can figure out other ways of how we can control invasive species. The biggest thing that we can do, awareness. By getting people to understand some of the problems that these cause, we can stop this before it's too late, or we can manage it we can get this to a manageable level. So that's why be aware of what you see. Report anything that you see that's probably not normal to wildlife officials, who will be able to come and help you out with either eradication or surveying the area. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for this episode, and I think pretty soon it will be time for us to leave Australia. But where are we going? Tune in next week and find out. Until then, though, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.